All right, everybody. Bote. Welcome to another episode of the Bantu Boyz Podcast. We're doing our first time, a live podcast. I'm your host, Balego Zizawisa Jr. here with my manager, cousin, the guy that swindles all of our money. Go ahead.
This is Patrick Delabanza.
Yeah, the manager. So we have a real special guest, a highly educated, very smart. Well, I mean, first of all, yeah, we're so happy to have you on this episode talking about coronavirus. Introduce yourself, brother.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and this is a platform that I think is really neat. My name is Carl Kananda. I am a research scientist with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes. Also known as the CDC. You know, we have to dumb it down for me. You can say it. The Center for Disease, like Center for Disease. What Center for Disease? No. Carl. So you work for the CDC. Where are you from? Like, you can talk about like where, like like your cultural background, like your ethnicity, and and also talk about your background.
Yeah,
educational background.
Yeah, so essentially, I'm a scientist by trade, and just an advocate for marginalized community by vocation. So I like to call myself, a scientist with a passion, just to mobilize resources for innovation, in resource limited communities, and a lot of that, stems from where I was born. Born and raised in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and there until I was about 13 years old.
Okay. That's interesting because, like, in my little educational background, we talked about it off camera, but for people that are watching, I have a master's in biomedical science. Well, my emphasis was on my brain's buffering right now. Emphasis on HPV, HIV co-infection, and DNA damage. And one thing we worked on is like you said, communities that are marginalized or disenfranchised, that are highly susceptible to like HIV and HPV. And it's interesting because like we also Magic had HIV, but that was like 30 years ago, and he's living. People don't think HIV still exists, but in South Central LA, where there's still a rest haven, like it's still like a high increase of Black people that have HIV, and people that get HIV, they die from HPV induced cancers like cervical cancer, anal cancer, throat cancer, or whatnot. So like I love what you're doing, like with looking at these marginal communities. So at the CDC, what is your job there? What is it you do? You can tell us as much as you can. Don't tell us all.
Yeah. So I think just my background is in scientific research. I have a master's in organic and medicinal chemistry. Cool. And I spent some years as a research scientist in the lab, where I was developing probes for cancer detection and for tropical infectious disease such as malaria.
Strong.
After I completed my research, I interviewed and was selected for a fellowship with the Center for Disease Control, also known as CDC. Even before I ended up at CDC, when my family moved to the U.S., my father was a highly esteemed doctor back home, and he was very.
What kind of doctor?
He was an OBGYN.
Oh, strong. Okay.
Yeah, so he was an integral part of the community. So when we moved to the U.S. 17 years ago, it was really hard for him to transfer his medical credential to the U.S. And in between some blue collar jobs, some of which are now considered essential.
Yeah.
He continued to be persistent in finding a way to fulfill his passion for medicine while fighting for his family. Fortunately, that opportunity was presented to him, through a program at CDC.
Strong.
Him to use his experience as a physician to serve in a resource-limited country.
It's funny, Carl, not to cut you off. And when I got my first master's, I had a classmate from Ghana. His dad was a doctor in Ghana, and it took him so hard to transfer his medical degree here in the States. They actually allowed him to go to, I think, Alabama. I don't know what medical school in Alabama. He finished the medical degree in 2 years. After the second year, they were like, "This guy's a doctor." He was like teaching the teachers.
Yeah. So a lot of these, like my father, a lot of these migrant, public health professional have years of experience.
Yeah.
But once they come here, they don't necessarily have, it's not necessarily backed by, a U.S. system.
Yeah, but I will tell you this though. What I'm not going to put his name. His father, when his father was explained to us when he came here and he was in medical school, the one thing he noticed the difference was the doctors in Africa know how to do more with less because they don't have the high facilities. They don't have Kaiser Permanente. They don't have the CDC. They don't have the NIH, to help them out or to fund them or to have these grants. So they know what to do more with less.
You're right. That's absolutely right. The program that my dad, applied for and joined was that it allowed for these experienced physicians, to serve in community where resources weren't available, for me, that was an inspiration, so I think ever since I can remember having a clear vision of what I wanted to do, DC was always a place that I wanted to work.
That's wrong. Yeah, okay. That's excellent. So is your goal to try to go back to Congo and try to help out?
It is. Initially, when I joined CDC, I work in their division of laboratory sciences.
Yeah,
I was a research chemist there. So around the time when in 2018, right after the Ebola outbreak, began in DRC, there was an opportunity that presented itself for me to be involved.
Oh, nice.
So I actually began assisting CDC in early 2019. I was, initially called on to use my skills on an Ebola PSA video where I even stepped in to do the Swahili version with a Congolese basketball legend and philanthropist Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah. Hey, that guy's Hall of Fame. Let's not discredit that. He's Hall of Fame too.
Of course.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, to cut in, we actually do have a clip and we can play it right now real quick and we'll come back to it.
Yeah, go ahead. This is great.
So let me throw to it and we'll be back.
All right.
Bonjour. Je m'appelle Dikembe Mutombo.
Leo ninaongea na mweye kwani tunasisitiko juu ya nchi letu. Na ninaomba msaada kwenu kwa ngisi ya kumalizisha mgonjwa ya Ebola kaskazini ya nchi letu. Ebola ni ya kweli, haina uongo. Hapa sasa kipindi ya kuongezeka kwa wingi wa wagonjwa ajifanyaki kwa namna hiyo dunia mzima.
This is awesome.
Yeah, hey.
This is awesome.
I didn't understand a word, but it sounded great.
No, it's just the fact that he's next to Mutombo. And it's funny because yesterday I was watching just a side note, there's nothing to do, so I was watching how good was Mutombo as a player or whatever. And he was the first person to win 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. I love basketball, Carl. So it's funny. I was just watching stuff from Mutombo yesterday. Hilarious.
Yeah, just on top of being great at basketball, which he was. He's also just a humanitarian. I think he has an organization that does a lot of significant work in the Congo and here within the diaspora. So really shout out to Dikembe.
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of people don't realize when Mutombo went to Georgetown, he walked onto campus to become a doctor. It wasn't like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, John Thompson was like, wait, you're 7 feet. What are you doing? He was like, no, because his whole idea was to become a doctor to go back home, right? To go help people in Congo. But they're like, no, you're.
Oh, it's not. Oh,
yes, sir.
Your sound cut out for a second.
Okay, I'm sorry. You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. So, we're so excited to have you on here, Carl, with your background, and you worked for the CDC, and you helped out with the Ebola outbreak through the CDC. But for the people that are watching and people that are going to be listening to this on the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, we wanted to do a section where we kind of break down it might be I don't want to say elementary, but definitions of what is a virus, because people will hear the word virus and they'll have this these awkward connotations or connotations where it brings fear, but people don't actually know what it is. So what is an actual virus?
Yeah, so there are different organisms and different agents that infect people. So those are infectious agents. Virus is one of them. It's a very small infectious agent that can enter an organism and cause them to be sick. they usually contain genetic material that once in the body take over the certain cells in the body and make copies of the virus.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. This is great. So what is a like? So when you see like, I know like with my background like HIV, when people hear like human immunodeficiency virus, and people are like, oh well, HIV is a sort of virus. What's like the difference? I know like with HIV, for example, one thing HIV does when it gets into your body and it attacks your like CD4 cells, and those are like your cells that make you that keep you like healthy. It attacks your viral load, and when you take certain medication like PrEP or like highly active antiretroviral medication, I'm sorry, Patrick and people, we're getting like all nerded out, but this guy's like I'm smart, but Carl's like brilliant, so Carl knows exactly what I'm talking about. But like it controls the viral load so it doesn't multiply. That's what viruses do; they multiply. You know what I mean? Depending on depending on what type of virus, it depends on the rate. But I know with like HIV, you could, to have a healthy like viral load, you have a healthy cell number. You need between like 500 to like 1,600 healthy cells, or whatever. But you want to keep that viral load like controlled. Like for example, with like Magic Johnson with HIV, I always bring him up because we had to like study him or whatever. Like he still has HIV in his body. It's just like the medication he takes just controls that viral load so it doesn't multiply. So people think he doesn't have like the actual virus. He still does. It's just you have to control that like viral load. But okay. So Carl, what makes a virus novel?
Yeah, I know, and that's actually a question that once this COVID-19 outbreak began affecting people outside of China. A lot of people were very inquisitive about about the naming, but novel is just a synonym for the word new. So when there's a novel virus, it means that it's a type of virus that just hasn't been detected or known to cause infection.
Okay. This is interesting. What makes COVID-19 like different from like the common cold or like the flu?
Like you mentioned earlier, different virus cause different illnesses.
Right.
So the common cold, the flu, and COVID-19 are all caused by different type of virus. The flu is caused by the influenza virus, while COVID-19 is caused by the novel coronavirus. Those names are usually in how the virus is shaped. And they also differ in their symptoms. All right. So once they're inside the body, we know that COVID-19 causes symptoms such as fever, dry coughing, body aches, and headaches.
Right.
Also very similar to flu symptoms. While common cold only causes mild upper respiratory symptoms such as sneezing, runny nose, and congestion. But in terms of the epidemic, what makes those different is just the amount of information available to scientists. So because we don't know much about, and we're still figuring out information around COVID-19, it makes it very challenging to find solutions.
It's interesting because once this COVID-19, I guess, hit the mainstream, especially out here in, I would say, I'm just thinking about people I'm around. When we heard it was like flu-like symptoms, when they first diagnosed it, we're like, oh, well, it's just like the flu, just work out, eat well, drink orange juice, and you'll be fine. But the fact that now with more time, doing more research, we're like, no. It's different than the actual flu.
Yeah, it is. I think, it varies in, how it's, how contagious the virus is. So the transmission, it varies on how it affects the body. Although they both are respiratory illnesses, flu usually, COVID-19, has been shown, to be more transmissible and more fatal than, because we're not at the end yet and we're still gathering data. Transmission and the lack of information around the disease, is really what brings, what is concerning, officials and the public.
Let me ask you this: like, you worked on Ebola, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess this goes into the next question. I guess, what's the difference between an epidemic and pandemic that people don't know? Like,
yeah, and I had to correct myself there because the difference between an epidemic and a pandemic is the geographic spread of the.
Right.
Yeah, so most pandemic begin as epidemic, right? So epidemic are usually localized spread, while pandemic usually can start from one country, but then spread to many different countries.
Yeah, so like an example would be like the plague. Like the Black Plague would be like an epidemic, right? Because it was like kind of localized, right?
Well, so plagues are usually pandemics.
Okay.
So a difference that you would use would be, I think the Ebola outbreak was an epidemic because it affected, I think in 2014 that affected, certain countries in West Africa.
Yeah.
And currently it's affecting the DRC, the Congo.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
I used to make this like joke where it's like, oh, this is a man-made disease because how does it go and it's in Ghana, but then it skips over Gabon and then now and Brazzaville, but now it's in DRC. Like how does that occur?
Yeah, and that's another issue because that's transmission. So usually when somebody is sick, and virus don't, of course they are more fatal in vulnerable or at-risk individual. But when someone is sick, if I'm sick and I reside in the Congo and I take an airplane and I'm in close contact with many people within the airplane who reside in different locale, they can now be in contact with other people and further spread. So that's why you can have a spread in one country and then a spread in a different location because of contacts.
Okay, that's I guess maybe I'm being, I don't want to say Pan-Africanist, but I'm like, no, somebody's doing this to us. How does this disease skip? But it's like, it literally takes one person, that just goes on a plane and then infects a whole village. Then one person from that village, he goes across the street and then.
And also, virus have host, and and viral hosts, viruses host, and those hosts can be present, in different places.
Right. And I think that's another thing too. Like a viral host can be a person, it can be an animal. People don't. That's why I think even some of my friends or people that I know that don't take coronavirus seriously, they don't understand. Like when you're still having these in-house parties, one person can be a host and you not even know it. You shake their hand, you accidentally touch your eye, you go. Like I have friends that are still like, I'm gonna go work out with a buddy of mine, or I'm gonna go have it's my birthday, I'm gonna have a party at my house. I'm like, no, you can't. You can't. It literally just takes one droplet to transfer it. It's
Yeah, and people, and I think people can be, once people can infect other people, as we know, but when a virus starts from a host, which is usually like a natural reservoir, it's usually an animal that is infected but doesn't show symptoms.
Right.
Yeah, that's usually what that's what's commonly referred as a host. But in the case of COVID, we've and which is I'm hoping that we get into that later. We've noticed that people can be sick and not show symptoms.
Yeah, people are like asymptomatic, and it's just there's a lot, and that's the thing with viruses. A lot of viruses, for example, are like chronic illnesses. So you can have this illness for years and show no signs, and then 10 years later, hopefully Corona's not like this, but I know like with like HIV, there's been cases where a guy would have HIV, 10 years later show no signs, no symptoms. He goes and gets a checkup, a physical, then they're like, oh, your CD4 cells are like at 400. You have HIV. And he's like, what do you mean I have HIV? What happened, they'll ask him questions about his past, they'll do like a case study, find out 10 years ago, the guy was sleeping around with a bunch of different women, caught it, didn't know it. 10 years later, he has HIV.
Yeah, a lot of these viruses can remain dormant in within the body.
Yeah.
So you can contract, the virus And although the virus isn't circulating in biological fluid, can be in biological reservoir.
Ooh. Can you explain to people what biological
reservoir
is? That's strong.
So biological reservoir are just areas in the body where the virus can remain dormant without affecting without entering the blood.
Right.
So that includes like seminal fluids. That includes like it can remain in the brain
Right.
Yeah. So those are biological reservoirs.
This is great. I'm sorry, Carl. This is great. How can we combat this pandemic?
So of course, I think for me, there are two answers to that. I think from a public health and a research scientist standpoint, I think it's important that everyone do their part and just following guidelines, given by public health expert. I think social distancing in order to slow the nationwide spread of COVID is one of them, and also making sure that we continue to protect individuals that are vulnerable. Just older people with weakened immune system, and people with severe chronic conditions.
It's funny you said you bring up. Oh no, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then there's also another aspect to that from a public health standpoint, which is we can continue to develop pharmaceutical solutions to this issue. I think they're developing drugs to combat COVID is one of them, and also developing vaccine is another one. But I think on the more personal level, there are things that we can do. We can engage each other and just making sure that those of us who have access to the information and who have the ability to digest this information are able to present this information to people within our inner circle in ways in which they can understand it.
Yes.
Because they're already a trusted.
Oh, Carl, sorry. At least on my end, it cut out. I don't know if it was.
Oh no, it's still
going.
We're still good. Yeah.
We're fine.
Okay. Okay, go continue.
Carl, to add, I agree with everything you said, but to add on to it, I think this is a moment in time, like for us as Africans, Black people, to take a step back and try to address. We need to start changing our approach to medicine. It's going to be very hard because there's a lot of issues we have in with the medical system, because we've always been used as like dummies for medication. We've always been used as we don't trust the healthcare system. We don't believe especially here in America, we don't believe the American health system is culturally competent and looks at us as people. They look at us as like lab rats. So I think there's that factor. And then I think another aspect of public health is, or what we need to do with our health is like maybe trying to change our diets. We all, listen, I love kwanga, I love taba, I love mikate, I love it all, but it's like we have to try to become more healthier. I think this is a time and a moment where we need to start taking our health a little bit more serious, right?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with some of the points that you brought up. I think that of course, practicing, having practicing good healthy habits are important. I think it's good to have to regularly exercise. It's good to to do things that can strengthen your immune system,
right?
But and a multitude of other things. But I think in this period, when we don't know what exactly how the virus behave, it's important that those of us who have ways to communicate and with others, and those of us who trust, because there's a deep mistrust between marginalized community and the state.
Right. And I think it's important, like people like yourself that are like in the background, you're in the front line, to share, and especially like being on this platform, sharing this information with our fellow people to be like, hey, we need to take these steps to make sure our health is in place. Understand that your voice is important. Understand that your health is important. I would hope like being here in Los Angeles, I mean, like we're in South LA, so there's tons of communities, a big community that's like marginalized, where it's like they don't trust the healthcare system. They'll be sick, and not even go to the hospital because like I don't trust the doctor. You know what I mean? Like the doctor doesn't look at me as a person. So there's a lot of like underlying issues that we still have to fight. And before we even get to that point of like, hey, I'm going to like take care of my health.
Yeah. So I think, aside from, of course, following the guidelines by public health expert and, supporting, those on the front line, I think continue to, engage each other and communicate with each other, through platforms such as this one, moderating these conversations that are essential, about, factors that are directly affecting and indirectly affecting our communities. Very important.
This is a side note. Could there ever be an Ebola outbreak out here? Because every time we think of Ebola, we always think it's like, oh, it's in Africa. Could there ever be one here?
So
before you answer that, Carl, sorry, not to cut you off. Before you answer that, Julian just joined us.
All right, he's here.
Julian. Just to answer the question you asked about an outbreak, outbreak can happen anywhere.
Uh-huh.
Right, an outbreak can happen anywhere the virus is present.
Yes.
All right, and of course, for it to be deemed an outbreak, it has to, propagate within, a locale, faster than, pretty fast.
Yes.
Yeah. So an outbreak can happen anywhere, but the current virus affecting, the current virus in the Ebola outbreak is, endemic to the Congo.
Okay.
It's originally from the Congo. That's why, that's why it affects the Congo, more than it affects any other place.
Okay. So before we get to the next question, Julie, introduce yourself.
Wait, Julian?
Here?
Oh, wait, hold on. I don't think you can hear him.
him.
No, I think his mic is on mute. Julian, we can't hear you.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, not yet. No.
No, can't hear you.
Nope.
Live
podcast, everybody. Live podcast.
Yeah, we're live. We're having technical difficulties. This guy has Ubuntu headphones. Take them off.
Oh yeah, are those wireless Well, not that I can hear.
We'll continue. Well, Carl, like, could you explain to people what the difference between drugs are and a vaccine?
So in coming up with, in one of the solutions that I mentioned earlier, and just how to fight, viruses.
Yes, sir.
Are, pharmaceutical approaches. So drugs and vaccines are both pharmaceutical approaches. But the difference is one is a cure, and then the other one is mostly used for prevention. So drugs are designed to treat an infection, while vaccines are designed to prevent the body from getting infected.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. It's funny. I didn't know that. It's funny when you always think about. Because I guess I don't know. Maybe there's and Patrick, and Julie, you guys can chime in. Like, you hear these like, why are they trying to develop a vaccine, and this isn't good, and it's like, no, an actual vaccine is actually probably necessary so this pandemic doesn't occur again. You don't want this to happen again.
Yeah. So drugs are used. Drugs are used, to treat, an infection or a virus once it enters the body, or a pathogen, not just a virus. But vaccines prevent people from getting infected.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Patrick, maybe Julian, press the audio. There should be like an audio button at the bottom that you should be allowed to. But, Carl, are you familiar with how vaccines are developed?
So my background is in drug discovery and development. And then through that process, of course, you familiarize yourself with, vaccines, vaccine development. Vaccines are developed from, a weakened or killed version of a virus. It is then introduced to the body to stimulate a response in the immune system. It's kind of like a way to teach the body to detect and kill the virus before it ever happens.
So, Carl, how do you feel about? It's funny. It goes right to the next question. How do you feel about the vaccine development in Africa? Like, the fact that they want to go to Africa to be like, hey, we want to develop this vaccine in Africa.
Okay. Oh, Julian's sound is working.
Okay, great. All right, Julie. Yeah, Julie. Part before you answer the question, Julie, introduce yourself, please.
Sorry, Carl. Sorry, everybody. Just technical problem. Carl, how you doing, brother? So my name is Julian Chikuna, part of the Bantu Boyz. Stand-up comedian and actor. Raised in Belgium, grew up in Belgium, rooted in Africa, of course, from the DRC. And here I am in the US. It's been 8 years now. 7 years.
Oh, excellent. So, Julie, are you, Patrick, you showed Julian where we are in the questions, right? So, Julian, you can chime in or whatnot. But
we're in the vaccine part.
Yeah, so Carl, go ahead and answer. I said,
okay, perfect.
What do you feel about the vaccine development in Africa? Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
So, I think, there are conversations now being had, following, comment, made by, two French scientists on the show about vaccination in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, of course, when talking about something, that you're injecting into people, it's very important to understand how to convey that topic to people.
Right.
I think that even before we can talk about, vaccine being injected, it's important to just, for people to understand how a vaccine developed. I think before vaccines are ever injected into people, they are rigorous testing that goes into making sure that the vaccine is both works and is safe.
Right.
So, there are actually I think generally there are 6 stages to developing a vaccine.
Okay.
There's a stage where, the vaccine where the virus is studied, and then the virus is either weakened or killed. Mm-hmm. And interaction of that virus with, cells outside the body is understood.
Mm-hmm.
Once that's understood, then more testing follows. More rigorous testing follows before a vaccine is actually injected into people. So I think that, in the way that conversation was initially presented, it was, with the assumption that people understood that process, or with the insinuation that people will be injected with vaccine that hadn't already been tested.
Right. My question is this: why do they emphasize Africa? Since America now, I believe, just passed China in the cases, why don't you use the vaccine development on people that are infected in the states that are being affected at these alarming numbers?
Yeah, so vaccines are actually the most effective way to deal with illnesses. So vaccines are actually the most effective way to deal, especially with virus, to deal with these kind of infections. So I think the approach should be, once we understand and know that vaccines are the most effective approach to infections, we should want to have these kind of treatment options available for people within marginalized community.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I think, of course, there are many other factors that goes into it, such as just, the mistrust and distrust, between, the public and the people that are supposed to represent them.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why this platform, such as this one, are important, so that, we can begin the conversation on what exactly is a vaccine, how does a vaccine work, and, what goes into a vaccine before it's injected into people, because, I think that vaccines are generally good. Actually, vaccines are good.
Right. I think they're great, but it's just we have such a bad Black people in the medicine of the West. We have a terrible relationship, a 500-year relationship where it's terrible. It stems from the moment the colonization happened. We know Tuskegee. We know Henrietta Lacks. What they did with her cervical cancer cells, and they made $1 billion industry off it, and her family still lives in the ghetto. They don't even want to repay her family for using her cells. So that distrust it's evident and it's prevalent amongst us. So it's I don't know. When I heard that, and I don't know, Patrick and Julie, you can chime in. When you heard they're going to develop in Africa, I'm do they not? Are they ignorant to the relationship? You can't just say we're going to go to Africa.
Yeah, so that my point exactly. I think the way in which that conversation was spurred, was completely inappropriate and distasteful.
Yeah.
I think that I think such conversation needs to be had. But I think the focus must be on, just communicate with each other, just what are vaccines? Are vaccines good for our community? And the answer is yes. How do we go about, just reducing that stigma that vaccines are bad? Because I think, especially in marginalized and resource limited communities, such as the Congo, we will need vaccines.
Right.
And we will need these vaccines to be developed, effectively, but also promptly. On average, a vaccine takes, 10 to 13 years to develop. Imagine if we had to wait 10 or 13 years, to develop immunity to an illness. Imagine what that can, what impact that can have on, in the Congo or many other, places, with many other resource limited places.
Oh, our life expectancy would go up tremendously. Oh, yeah. What?
And Julian, before you throw your question in, one thing I wanted to kind of touch on, Carl, because you said, do we need the vaccine? And just kind of to point out to people, this also is going on, of course, thank God, the treatment for Ebola was developed. But right now, which I completely forgotten about this, apparently right now there's a measles outbreak that's been going on in Congo since 2019. And I think the last I saw, Al Jazeera was talking about it last week. I think they said 349,000 people have been infected since 2019. And I think they said 6,500, most of them children. So it becomes one of those situations where, we're affected. Because one of the things that I was reading about measles, one of the things that it does is people don't die from measles. They die from measles compromising their immune system. So, and then you add on top of that, because of all of this going on, they've been talking about that a lot of places, because there's a lot of programs out there to get vaccinations out to different countries.
Yes.
Because of all this, all focus has been shifted towards COVID-19. So I think I saw numbers, they're saying 78 million people probably aren't going to get vaccinations now because of all this. So now those 349,000 people minus the ones who already passed away, those 300,000 plus people, they're a part of that group that could get hit by COVID-19. Unfortunately, if they get infected, it could go bad for them.
Yes, and that's exactly right. And I think that just based on my experience, in the in the 2018 Ebola outbreak, some of the challenging that resource limited community and marginalized community will face. They will face both conditions with health conditions that were there before the pandemic, while dealing with the pandemic.
Right. Just that added issues on top of issues.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I even think about I'm sorry, Julian, before you hit your question, I just even think about the infrastructure of places like Congo where our infrastructure is still developing, and then you add coronavirus where it's it slows down the process.
And yeah, I think that's actually one of the greatest challenge right now, and one of the greatest challenge in the Congo, and it's just dealing with two outbreaks, because you have well, first of all, the weak public health systems,
right.
These systems don't the systems are dilapidated and weakened,
right.
And on top of that, you're also dealing with now two outbreaks. So you have to, find ways to allocate resources to both responses.
It's a headache. Yeah, go ahead, Julia. Go ahead.
So, based on the pandemic of Ebola we had a couple of years ago, right? So, what are the challenges to anticipate for Congo in addressing COVID-19, like the healthcare system, infrastructure, enforcement of stay home, etc.
Yeah, so I think and on top of building on top of the two that we've already mentioned, which is a weak public health system, and also dealing with two outbreaks. Another one that a challenge that I saw in the Ebola outbreak, and I'm seeing now in dealing with the COVID pandemic is just building trust between the public and the official responsible for the response. Yeah, so I think one of the things that we're seeing, in both Ebola outbreaks in 2014 in West Africa and with the current Ebola outbreak was that it was just a social, as much a social challenge as it was a public health challenge.
Right.
So engagement was something that was very challenging. Making sure that the people that were at risk were engaged. Making sure that communication. Making sure that the proper information attained to people who were at risk. Not just the information, but information in the form that those people can actually understand. All right. So in talking about marginalized community here in the U.S. We have to make sure that information is available, in layman's terms. Right? We have to make sure that information is also available to people who can then explain or moderate, discussions such as this one, with people who don't have a scientific background.
Right.
So in the Congo, we have to make sure that this information, is available, in different languages.
Yeah. Right.
We also have to make sure that the information given is culturally appropriate, because
it's funny you say that, because just even a focus group that just has the equivalent of let's say a question that's the equivalent of 7th grade, not English, but whatever, in Swahili, Lingala, Kikongo, Chiluba, whatever language you speak, where you talk to people about this is what you need to do when you have a symptom, go here. What do you think this virus is? What do you think this drug is? This is a vaccine. This is what the vaccine does. It allows people to develop confidence in either the public health system, the medical system, right? And feel confident enough to go to a healthcare provider.
Exactly. I think communicating risk to individual
Yes.
is just a part of the response as developing drugs and vaccine.
I would even add this too, Carl, and I want to hear your opinion on this. The healthcare providers have to develop a sort of competency as well to the people, because, health, talking about someone's health is another form of vulnerability, So if I go in to talk to your father's a doctor. You said what type of doctor was your father?
He was an OBGYN.
Right. So if I go in there with my wife, right, let's say culturally I go in there, I'm like, hey, my wife's having problems or issues. I know your father is culturally competent, but just like I'm saying as an example, a doctor has to be competent to be like, okay, if I'm going to talk to a man and his wife, maybe I have to talk to him first, because you don't know, in their culture, maybe the man makes a decision. There's a lot of things in medical schools that they don't teach, the doctors, about dealing with different people's cultures, And
I agree. And whether that's in the Congo, whether that's here in America, we really see that, these solutions that are, recommended to, for people to follow, have to make sure that they're specific to, everyone's context.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people in resource limited community don't have the luxury, to access updates, and know, every pertinent information surrounding, the illness, or they just may not even have, access to a doctor.
Right. And I think the going back to the question, Julie, you asked about the infrastructure. This is a huge test for the infrastructure of communities that are marginalized, where it's yo, who knew I mean, look, I love rap and I love hip hop and I love music, but a doctor is probably twice as important. We can clearly see a public health official is just as important. A nurse is just as important. So we have to take this time to be hey, maybe we need to focus our attention on those businesses, because we need them. Because if we're this vulnerable right now with all this technology and all this information, we have to be better prepared the next time this occurs.
I think not just that, but I think it's also important to repurpose a lot of the existing platforms. Right. So why not? Yes, we understand and know the importance of a frontline healthcare worker, and really to all of the frontline healthcare worker currently responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Right. But it's also important that people that have these platforms, that have the luxury to have these platforms, find a way to utilize their platform to communicate with their networks and and people who follow and listen to them.
Right. It's interesting because you don't even realize that, like, remember in the early 90s after Magic got HIV, there was like all of these musicians out of nowhere were like, hey, use a condom. And then condom, like, now it became like a social norm to use a condom whenever you're intimate. It just literally takes something like that. If you have a bunch of influencers that are I don't want to say conscious enough, but that are well informed. So if it's like, hey, wash your hands. If every famous person says wash your hands during this quarantine or during this pandemic, more people will start washing their hands.
Oh yeah,
it's that simple.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important for for people with with those platforms to utilize them to communicate both guidelines and risk of of COVID to others.
Patrick, you want to ask him the next question, bro?
Does that take us into the myths and misconceptions, or is that?
If you want, I mean, you can, because you kind of discussed about like up to date like info, right? I mean, it's your call.
I mean, yeah, we can go into that part. So for this next portion, obviously, where we're going to talk about myths and misconceptions, just some of the information out there. Mm-hmm. So I'll just start it off, and we'll kind of go through. So one, I know this is a question I've been hearing asked around. If you can hold your breath for 10 seconds or more without coughing or feeling discomfort, does that mean that you don't have COVID-19?
Yeah. So the most common symptom of COVID-19 are dry cough and fever. But people, information that we recently got is people can, be infected but be asymptomatic. So if you're somebody that's infected, you may not have any respiratory.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but it's been like 5 minutes. Like the sound is crazy. It goes on and off. I can't even hear like one word.
That's odd, because I was listening over here on the I got it playing on the live over here. It might be. I don't know if it's going to connect
each other. But
I can hear fine.
Let me try to.
I think it might be your connection, bro, because I've been having this kind of in the background on the side, having the live going. And yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
I mean, we're in these times, man. Everybody's on the internet, so people's connections are just acting real crazy. I had some issues earlier this week myself.
Everything you just said, I feel like you said that 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, no, there's a delay.
Like it takes time to.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's a 10-second, 15-second delay built in. So yeah, it's not going to be sync.
But just to answer your question, like the best way to confirm if you have the virus producing COVID-19 disease is through laboratory test. That's the only way you can confirm whether you have you've had the disease, or not.
Okay. Blake, you want to get that next? Oh wait, sorry. Oh, Blake, I think your sound went out. Oh wow, the internet gods they must not like us all that much.
We can't.
Yeah, Blake, your sound is still out. Yeah. We must have pissed somebody off at Spectrum. Well, I don't know who we met and stuff at one of these companies.
No,
his sound is out. Hold on. Okay. Hey, Blake, maybe you might want to drop out and then come back in again. See if that makes a difference. Yeah. Let's see. We'll give that a moment. While he does that, we can jump to the next one. So I know another question I've been hearing people say, or ask about, I should say, is does COVID-19 only affect older people?
So anyone can be infected by the novel coronavirus. Now there are, some people that, are more vulnerable, to these infections, and these are, older people. These are people with pre-existing medical conditions, and also people, with compromised immune system. So, COVID-19 affects everyone.
But it's funny because not that I didn't think it would affect, because we're young, so we're like, oh no, that's not gonna affect us, or it's over there, it's in Europe, it's in Africa, we're like ignorant or whatever. But once I started to see starting to affect people like directly, like maybe 2 people away, I was like, wait, this is really serious. A friend of ours, uncle died last week from it. I mean, I like sports, I like basketball, so I'm like, NBA players' parents are dying, and I'm like, wait, what's happening? This is real. This isn't like a joke. People need to take this serious. I know there's like kids that are like partying and stuff like that are like looking at this as vacation. No, this isn't vacation. This is real. This is a moment in the history books, like 100 years from now. 2020 pandemic, like people are gonna remember this.
Yeah, and and just because you're not at risk, that doesn't mean that your neighbor isn't. That doesn't mean that your mother or your grandmother isn't. It doesn't mean that your brother, or that doesn't mean that your coworker aren't.
Right.
So everybody can be infected, but of course there are people who are at a higher risk of of dying from the infection.
Right. Let's see here. I'm sorry, Patrick. I got back on. So, and Julie, I don't know where we are. I don't know what's the.
I did the second one. Does COVID-19 only affect older people? So.
Oh, okay. What about this, Carl? Does rinsing your throat with hot salted water or drinking tea prevent COVID-19 infection?
So the best way to protect yourself from COVID-19 is by preventing the virus from entering your body. Which can be done by making sure your hands are clean through frequent hand washing. Also avoiding touching surfaces and then touching your eyes, mouth, and nose. So those are the best method to prevent the infection, is to prevent the body from entering the virus from entering your body.
It sounds like good hygiene, pretty much. I mean, like.
Yeah, one of the things that pandemics do, during public health emergency, is that a lot of challenges that we already have within our health system are exposed and oftentimes exacerbated. So people who otherwise don't wash their hands frequently now should, because the way to prevent an infection is to just making sure that that the virus isn't present in your hand when if you were to decide to touch your eye, mouth, or nose, or to touch surfaces that other people will be touching,
or even cutting your nails. That time we don't cleaning the dirt under your nails, like especially when you're washing your hands. People don't realize how much dirt you can have under your nails, like especially if you're not a mechanic. Like, I'm sorry,
that's is important.
Yeah, it's so important. Yeah, Julie, can you hear us?
Is it still tripping, or
is it still tripping? Because if that, Patrick, you want to get the next one.
This one is a fun one. So, is COVID-19 caused by 5G internet?
That's a great question, Patrick.
No, viruses can't travel on radio waves, which are the waves that support 5G network. And actually, currently, COVID is affecting and spreading in countries where 5G mobile network isn't available. So COVID primarily spread through respiratory droplets that can be created when somebody coughs. So an infected person coughs or sneezes, or speaks to people. That's why it's important to not only practice social distancing, but when you are around someone that you haven't been around, to make sure that you keep at least 6 feet distance from that person.
It's really amazing. These are simple rules to follow, and we're having such a hard time doing. Wash your hands, 6 feet distance, good hygiene, and people are going crazy. Luckily, this isn't war. You know what I'm saying? Like, we gotta just follow these simple rules.
Yeah, and just don't be careful about the information you're taking in, question it.
Right.
Consider the source.
Right. Yeah, you have the time, do research.
Yeah, just to comment on that, there is a lot that we're figuring out about the virus and the illness. And I think when people are uncertain about what's happening, they want to know more. And when more isn't available, people can easily speculate. So I think it's very important that through this platform we are able to just keep pushing the message forward. And when these questions come about, to at least begin having these dialogue and these conversations surrounding these topics, so that we can all be better informed or best informed, to then inform our friends and family.
Yeah. I guess Julian, you're on. Can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah,
now?
we can hear you. Yeah, because I think now we're in the Q&A part.
You want to do Q&A? Okay, yeah, Carl. Let me ask you this:
or let Julian get that one because I know he's been
that one with the Congo. Julian, you see it?
Go ahead.
The infection rate one.
Yeah, this one. This one.
Question here. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
The low COVID infection rate, death.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is it okay? Carl, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Okay. Is it in Congo relatively low COVID-19 infection rates, death rates, and a sign that doesn't need to be worried about the virus?
So if I heard your question correctly, you asked there's a relatively low COVID rate in the Congo currently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Congo has relatively low reported cases and death compared to other places, which is very, which can be very tricky and very misleading. Because the only way to confirm a case is through testing.
Right.
So right now, there just aren't many people being tested.
Right. Because it's that's the thing. We don't have the proper infrastructure, so we can't get the numbers can be skewed.
Yeah, so of course we're building towards having the infrastructure where people can be tested, but until you can test, everyone, you won't exactly know who has it and who doesn't. So like with the Congo, where testing isn't available or readily available, especially available to everyone, you can't test everyone.
Right.
So you don't know whether so you can't conclusively say that there are no infection, or the infection isn't or the virus isn't as widespread as it is in other countries.
Carl, can I ask you this question? What are your thoughts on this idea that is it true that the coronavirus can't exist over 70 degrees? I've heard that. Is that true? Is that just like
no? So scientists are continuously collecting information, and that stems from a concern that people, or a speculation people have had, whether it can spread in hot climate, right? But currently, the evidence suggests that the novel coronavirus can spread even in areas where it's hot. We have cases in the Congo, and we're right below the equator.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I also wonder too, like Africans we have to deal with malaria, right? Yeah. So you know how genes mutate. So I always wondered, since we had to deal with that, our immune system can fight off corona. Is it ignorant to think that? Like the same way, like, white people that had to deal with the bubonic plague in Nordic countries, they have a receptor on their genes called the CCR receptor where they can fight off HIV. So they have low incident rates of HIV in like Nordic countries. Is it ignorant to think that because we had to deal with malaria, we can fight this virus? Yeah. So,
malaria and COVID are two different things, right? So the novel corona is a virus,
okay,
while malaria is a parasite.
Okay.
Not only are they two different infectious agent, but they also behave differently once they're in the body, right? So we know that the novel coronavirus affect the respiratory system, while it's not the case with malaria.
Okay.
Yeah. So just because you've built immunity for one illness, it doesn't mean at all that you have immunity against all illnesses. You don't become Superman once you've overcome malaria.
That's what I was thinking, because when I saw the numbers, and you know how they showed that graph of the world, I was like, it's not really affecting us in Africa. I was like, so maybe that could be it. I don't know.
Okay. Hey, I have a question actually from Facebook. I'm gonna put it up on the screen. It's from Emily Gallagher, and she asks, "Can the virus remain active after the host is deceased?"
And so, which parallels to something that was seen in the Ebola outbreak. But once viruses need living hosts in order to replicate, so they need cells, they need functioning cells, because what they do is they take over a cell to then make more copies of the virus. Right. So for now, we have, based on previous data on on coronavirus, we understand how long a virus can be alive outside, or not alive because viruses are an organism, but how long a virus can remain active outside of a person. Of course, as we get more information, we can understand exactly. Once we understand how long how long the virus is active outside the person, we can also know whether the virus can continue to be active once the host is deceased. So, of course, it will continue to be active once the host is deceased. That also depends on how long a virus can remain active, without a host. Generally, viruses need a host in order to replicate, and they need hosts with living cells.
Okay. There's one thing you said, and I've been hearing it. I didn't fully understand it. So you said that a virus is not you say it's not an organism, or what?
Yeah. So there are different type of infectious agents, right? Bacteria. There are usually infectious agents that are organisms that are alive. Those include bacteria and parasites. But virus is not a living organism. Virus is just very small agent that comes in the body and takes over your cell, and then now almost like trick your cells into replicating more copies of the virus.
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to do Julian, do this last one? Patrick, which one is this? Or do we have another question?
I can barely hear you.
Oh, okay.
But you know what?
We're on the what country?
So yeah.
What country?
So
what country are the COVID-19 vaccine being developed?
So the question to what country?
Did you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you. Yeah. So the question to what countries are currently developing COVID-19 vaccines? Yeah, I think the U.S. is currently has developed COVID-19 vaccine and are actually undergoing clinical trial for the vaccine they've developed. So is the UK, China, Australia, Canada, and Japan.
Yeah. And one question I wanted to ask you, and you brought it up earlier in one of our conversations offline, and I can never say this name right, but the malaria medication, the one that the president brought up, is it clonidine or?
It's quinine and chloroquine. Yes.
So I mean, I know there seems to be a back and forth. I can't, looking at articles, I can't see if there's like a conclusive answer. So is it something that's viable for the COVID-19, or are they still figuring it out? Do we still have to do research?
Chloroquine and hydroxyquinine, which are both drugs used to fight malaria, have shown success in treating COVID. the issue with that is that these drugs weren't developed for corona, right? So if you want to repurpose these drugs to use them to treat COVID, you have to undergo the same testing that that a drug that didn't already treat corona would undergo. You can't just say that it treats corona without doing those rigorous testing.
Okay. And from what I understand, aren't those drugs used like for other diseases and stuff like that?
Yeah. So quinine-based, those drugs, such as chloroquine, quinine, and hydroxychloroquine, are used to treat malaria. Actually, a lot of Central African countries have actually banned the use of those drugs for moderate malaria. Because what happened is, those drugs usually promote, the development of resistant strain. So, type of viruses that are actually resistant against the drug.
I see. Because I know, at least in my work and the work I do outside of this, I do government benefits hearings, and I know a lot of my clients, who have like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. I think they use the Kananda, and I'm gonna one day I'm gonna learn how to say it right. I know those medications are used specifically for autoimmune issues and rheumatoid arthritis. I think the brand name is called Plaquenil or something like that, but it's actually just this same malaria medication. And I know they've been saying that those drugs, there's a shortage of them right now. So these people, like some of my clients, are having issues getting their prescriptions. So they're having to worry about flare-ups if the supply doesn't get, re-upped.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And also with hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine, you also have to worry about, like some of the side effects that, like were, assessed for malaria, but not necessarily for COVID. Because, there are side effects, associated with, the consumption of these medications.
It's twisty. And one question I did see, somebody asked, so I know I've been seeing it's, what is it, a year to a year and 6 months in terms of developing a vaccine. Developing a vaccine, but is that like the hard line, like, okay, a year and 6 months, this is good to go? Or is it more, this is something we can work with, but maybe we need more time to actually work out the kinks?
That's a good question.
On average, it takes about, anywhere from 10 to 13 years to develop a vaccine. Right. That's because, remember, you're injecting people, with something. I think anytime, and we, as a scientist, before you do that, you have to make sure that whatever it is that you're injecting doesn't have any adverse effect. You have to make sure that, the benefits outweigh, the detriment. You have to make sure it's good, it's helpful, right? And in order to assess that, you have to initially make sure that it's something, that one even can treat whatever illness you're trying to treat, which is usually done outside the body. Then, you start, doing, trials to see, initially in small population sample to see, what are some of the effects associated with the efficacy? How good is the drug? I'm sorry, how good is the vaccine? Right. And then, what are some of the adverse effects that you can have from this vaccine? But there are also other mechanisms that through which vaccine development can be expedited. There are many ways through which that can happen. I think the FDA has one. And I know the European Union also has, a way to kind of like speed up the process of developing the vaccine, kind of like speed up the testing and making, the vaccine available to people.
Okay. Pat, you want to get that next question? I saw there was a question that pulled up.
Yeah. So the question from another viewer from, I think this is from YouTube, Spitbody by Ashley. And she says, so, hey, Bantu Boys, I've been hearing rumors of there possibly being a resurgence of COVID-19 in the future. Thoughts on this?
Yeah. So kind of like I'm gonna backtrack a bit on this one. So like COVID-19 is from a class of a virus that's is already known. So like this one in specific is caused by a novel type of coronavirus. So we won't know for sure about resurgence of this type of virus until we acquire much more data and information on the virus. I think right now we're just still collecting preliminary data and and understanding how the virus behaves. But there was a study that recently found like reinfection. So it's commonly believed that once you have a virus and you heal from it, your body develops immunity to it. And there's been several, a few studies that's shown that there can possibly be reinfection. But as of now, there's still more studies to be done, to know exactly how this virus behaves.
Sure.
Okay. So we got another question.
That's actually for me, but go ahead.
Okay, for sure. We'll put it up. So how long do you think this quarantine will go on? Will it be?
If I knew the answer to this one, I would tell you guys. But one thing I would tell people to do is I would encourage people, to just continue to practice, habits that they know they can practice for the remainder of the year. Right. So making sure, if you, like things that, guidelines are usually, to make sure that, you socially distance yourself to, just to lower the spread of the spread of the virus.
Right.
Making sure that you're washing your hands, to make sure that you stay at least 6 feet from people, to wear a mask, in public. So I would encourage people to continue to, follow these guidelines and follow other guidelines, that they can sustain, for, an extended period of time.
Right.
Okay. I have actually another question. For some reason, it's not showing up here on the
go ahead.
on here, but it's showing up on Facebook. It's from Brian Raven. Shout out, brother, from Texas. Hope you're doing good out there. So he's asking, how devastating is COVID-19 to the respiratory system?
Good question.
Yeah. So especially in people with pre-existing conditions, we've seen that it can be fatal. Very, very fatal. And of course, how fatal, that depends on the person. That depends on the person, immune system. That depends on the person's condition. That depends on, how the access to, adequate healthcare that the person has. So it varies from individual, but it is a fatal disease. It is a fatal illness. It's something that, can kill, especially those at-risk people in that at-risk group.
Okay. And from what I understand, and let me know if I'm wrong, I heard that it's the mucus in your lungs hardens, and that's why people have problems breathing, or is that wrong?
Yeah, so it affects, that's, my background, it affects your respiratory system. So and just like it does, just like with the flu, there are, buildup of mucus anytime you have a respiratory illness. But, so yes, it is something that does, directly affect your respiratory system.
Wow. This is, I guess, Patrick, and Julian, we'll get to this last one. Well, I guess before we get to this last one, I guess, we want to thank you, Carl, so much for being on the podcast. Like, I don't know how you guys feel. This has been very informative. I feel much better about the virus now, having like somebody explain it, because we all have our own like misconceptions or theories about this like virus or whatnot. But we want to thank you so much, like, for being on this podcast and explaining it.
Yeah, thank you very much for hosting me, and thank you very much for the platform. It's something that I was talking to you guys earlier that I think it's actually really admirable, and I commend you guys for putting this together. And I just want to continue to just stress to people just to make sure that those of us with access to this kind of information, that we don't take that for granted. That we take.
And also, too, I'm thinking in the future, if we do this, we will have you back on again. Maybe if you wanted to explain it in Swahili or in Lingala or French, you should be able to do it. So that'd be great because that'll hit a whole other demographic.
Yeah, I'm a polyglot, so I can definitely engage you guys in French, Swahili, Lingala, or even Spanish if you want it.
Oh, hey, let me tell you, we or si. Patrick, Julie, you guys have anything to say before we ask them this final question?
It's super informative. Honestly, I've learned a whole bunch in this conversation. I don't know if Julian has any other questions. I know his sound's having some issues right now too. Right. Man, the internet gods, they're trying to stop us, but we're prospering. We made it to the end of this episode.
Yeah, we made it. No, this is incredible. I guess we ask this question to every guest, Carl. What is your spirit animal?
I honestly, I wouldn't necessarily say I have a spirit animal. But, there are a few out there that I admire, very well. I think one of them is the bonobo. I don't know if you guys are familiar with.
It's a monkey. Yeah.
So it's a primate that actually has the closest genomic sequence to a human. Right.
This guy in the genome. I love this guy. Guy.
But I'm also a big fan of small insects. I think it's really anytime you see a small insect that like an ant that can carry something 3, 4, 5, 6, even 50 times its weight. That's something that gives it more of a heroic sense. So the bonobo and the ant.
Yeah, okay, that's okay. Like for me, it's I always look at a panther, but we all know a black panther is just a mutated leopard. Mm-hmm. Like Patrick, what's yours? Patrick, yours is a falcon. Yeah, falcon. And Julian is a. Did he say tiger? No.
Damn, he said it a bunch of times. I always forget.
Yeah, I was forgetting. I think it might be a tiger. So, what's funny? Patrick. Do you want to tell this last question from Brian before
yeah, sure. Yeah. I can get that in there. And first, let me thank you, Brian, for joining us. Thank you, Doris. Noblesse. Hey, man. Thanks for joining us, bro.
Always support. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Brian has one more question. So he was saying, I was just going to raise the animal rights issue, obviously, or the animal issue, I should say. And how does the virus affect them? Because, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So it's, so of course, I think that, it's believed that, coronavirus, so that the current host is believed to be, a bat, right? A bat's a host for the virus. And, of course, there are animals that are affected by coronaviruses. But up until to present time, there isn't substantial evidence to show that the same viruses that are affecting animals, can also affect human, right? So, and this is of course speaking outside of just like the host that is currently believed to be a bat. Right. And I'm hoping that I answer that question.
Yeah.
Because I know I haven't heard of any cases of it be affecting like people's pets. I only heard of one, like saying like some woman's dog out here in Los Angeles got corona. I was like, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was a case of zoo animals being affected with COVID.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. So of course just. The same way as we're dealing with like the stigma of a virus affecting people and humans. I think it's important to also understanding how in people in places where people have very close interaction with wildlife to understand just how also that's affecting the wildlife.
Right. All right. Well. Patrick, you have any more questions? I don't think we have.
Yeah, I feel like Carl, you've been great, man. There's a
No, Carl, this is great. Like this is absolutely outstanding.
Yeah. And we'll put it at the end. But I was going to say, Carl, because you mentioned earlier, obviously you've worked with different communities. We should link them up with the president.
Oh, absolutely. We should link you up with the Congolese community president. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would definitely love that. My role and my passion is to just make sure that to streamline both communication and resources that will lead to innovation in marginalized community or just in communities overall. So I'll definitely be open to that connection.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Patrick. Sorry.
I know it's just funny. Now we're having people come in. So, and this one's a little bit more unfortunate. So and I want to make sure I don't mispronounce this person's name. And obviously, you're not a medical doctor, but he says his name is DK Droll Metz Har. He says, "What should I do? My mom has corona."
So the first thing you do, to assure that somebody does have the virus, is to make sure that of course, they have been tested.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if it's a confirmed test, and if it's a confirmed case, if those results come back positive, it's important, of course, to continue to follow guidelines, outlined by organizations like the CDC, just to make sure to keep distance between the person the patient, the person that's been infected and everyone else. It's just also important to make sure that if someone who's tested positive, hospitals are equipped to making sure that they're taken care of. So contact your healthcare provider.
Okay.
And they should be able to best inform you.
Okay, and he's saying he's from Canada. It looks like somebody else, Jupe Garnell, saying the same thing. He's saying his brother has corona as well. So obviously the same advice you gave would apply to that person as well.
Yeah. So practice distancing and contact your healthcare provider.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anything, another thing is, people be patient. We're in uncharted waters. Nobody would have ever thought this would happen, especially in this modern time with all this technology. But that's how diseases and viruses are. They mutate, they change. So people just please be patient and listen to people like Carl that are telling you, wash your hands. You know what I mean? Check with your healthcare provider. Take this very serious, because if it affects you, it affects us all. It's funny how this disease shows how we're all connected, right?
Yeah, and I'll encourage people to also continue to listen to a public health expert. CDC has a coronavirus homepage. So if you go to www.cdc.gov/coronavirus, and those information are also available, in different organizations, in different languages. I know CDC has information about coronavirus, available in Chinese, Spanish, and there are some organizations out there that have the information available in other languages. And I know these organizations are continuously working to provide this information, not only information that are accurate, but that also are linguistically and culturally appropriate.
All right, and we just put the link up right now, or we showed where people can look for the coronavirus on the CDC. Since Julian's back, is there anything you would like to say to Carl, or before we?
Well, you guys, honestly, the network. I don't know if it's my. I don't think it's my phone. My network, shows all the bars.
Okay, right. Yeah, it's the thing. Everybody's on the internet at once. Everybody. Right. So it's
been a rough podcast, but it's all good.
Everybody.
Also wanted to send much love, Erica, because Erica just got in our comments. She said apparently her dad just got diagnosed with COVID. So we send all our love, prayers, positive thoughts your way, Erica.
Yeah.
Holla at us in the DMs.
Yeah. Please Erica, get at us in the DMs. But I guess
Sorry,
we guys. Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
No, Julian, what are you saying?
You mean Erica?
This guy's audio is terrible.
Marlo from the open mic.
From Marlo, yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
Keeping her.
I guess if that's it, I guess Carl, once again, thank you, and we'll see you guys. Carl, I don't know if you can put your information where people can find you if they have any more questions or whatever. But I don't know if you're on social media.
On the screen right here, brother.
There it is.
If those are below my contact information, and I'm open to network and to connecting with anyone, whether it's about information concern about COVID-19 or any other area that I'm experiencing, or just if it's just an opportunity to network, I'm open to that.
Okay, well, his information is there. Thank you guys for watching. You guys can follow us, Bantu Boyz on Instagram, like us on Facebook. We're on Spotify. We're also on Apple Podcasts. Please leave questions. We try to answer any questions, try to get back to you guys immediately, at least within an hour or something like that. And also share the content. And you guys, thanks for watching. Patrick, you want to give your personal Instagram, or just they can find us all through Bantu Boyz?
I'll go real quick and just drop mine. But you see at the bottom of the screen, look, I'm a busy person, so I got a whole bunch of accounts for some reason.
Look at this guy.
So Persona Big Camera, Congolese YouTubers, African YouTubers. Just hit me up on Instagram. Get me in the DMs. Julian, you wanna go next?
Yeah, you can add me on the Bantu Boyz.
There
Instagram.
it is. So follow Julian on Instagram, Julian_Chikuna. All right.
Yeah, and Blake, I got you too.
Yeah, absolutely. You follow me, Blake Oziza Jr. That's my personal What's the Podcast. I have another podcast where we talk about random stuff. But because of the quarantine, we started season 3, but everybody's on we're kind of shut down. But once we get back up and running, you'll see season 3, and then of course Bantu Boyz Podcast. You'll be able to follow me there. That deals specifically with like Congo.
Oh, quick question to Carl.
So, yeah, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next week.
Wait, hold on. Wait, Julian, so you had a question for Carl?
Quick question to Carl. Carl, quick question related to our roots, African roots. So your last name, where's your last name from?
No, that's great. No, I hear everything.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. I was born and raised in the Congo, so I was born and raised in DRC, and I've been in the U.S. for about 17 years.
That's great.
Okay, and I think he probably means like, are you from the east or you? Oh, good.
What part of?
Are you asking where in the Congo am I from?
Yeah, I think that's what he was asking.
What part of Congo?
Oh yeah, so I was born and raised in Kinshasa, but my family is from the east. So my mom is from Katanga and my mom is from Maniema.
Excellent.
Well, guys,
got you.
Okay. It's been my pleasure.
Oh no, you did more than. Thank you so much, Carl. Thank you so much, brother. Merci.
All right, peace.
All right, peace, you guys.
All right, peace.
Yeah.